Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the crew and Captain Karen Coleman, we would like to welcome you on board the second leg of our flight SPIPA, non-stop service bound for Japan. We are currently preparing for takeoff and are expected to be in the air in approximately 5 minutes' time. Our flight time today will be around 3 hours. Please make sure that your speakers are turned on and that your internet connection is securely fastened. Please turn on all personal electronic devices, especially laptops and cell phones. Thank you for choosing EU Japan Center Airlines. Enjoy your flight.
Hello, everybody. A very good morning to those of you joining us from Europe. Good afternoon to those of you watching from Japan and elsewhere in the East. And good evening to those of you joining us from other parts of the world. You're all very welcome to day 2 of the EU-Japan online conference, Cities, Regions, Clusters on the Road to Zero Carbon. I'm Karen Coleman. I'm a journalist and a broadcaster from Ireland, and I'm going to be moderating today's event, which is organised by the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation with the financial support of the EU as part of a 1-year cycle of events supporting EU-Japan cooperation for decarbonisation. So over the next few hours, we will be finding out what are the best practices in Europe and Japan when it comes to decarbonisation. We hope that the conference will serve as an inspiration to cities, municipalities and clusters in Japan and Europe to take more actions for our climate. Action by cities is particularly important as they are a vital source of emissions, and the conference is an opportunity for cities, municipalities and clusters from both sides to learn from each other. Japan and the EU are heading in the same direction, climate neutrality by 2050. So both benefit from sharing lessons learned on decarbonisation policies. So you're going to be taken now on a virtual tour of leading European and Japanese clusters, cities and regions on the pathway towards carbon neutrality. So I hope you enjoy it and you get a lot out of it. But before we begin, let's get down to business. I want to just start with a few housekeeping issues. Today's proceedings will be translated simultaneously in English and Japanese, and you will need to select your preferred audio channel using the interpretation button on your Zoom screen. That's the globe icon, by the way. The video recording and presentation materials of the 2 days of the conference will be published on the event's website. That's spipa-japan.net by the end of the week. All registrants will be informed by email when it is available. We're going to have several Q&A sessions throughout the thematic sessions and our discovery sessions. So at the end of each one, we're going to have a Q&A session. Please do feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A icon on your Zoom screen. We had lots and lots of questions yesterday. It was really, really great. So please do feel free to put your questions in through the Q&A box during those sessions. And over the next 3 hours now, we're going to visit 12 destinations all over Europe and Japan. And the key topics we're going to explore today are decarbonizing transport in cities, low carbon housing and construction, and initiatives for low carbon tourism. So as you can see, it's going to be a hectic, exciting, and hopefully inspiring 2 days. So let's begin now. And to kick things off, I'd like to welcome now Dr. Philippe de Taxi du Poet, the EU side General Manager of the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation. And the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation supports exchanges between businesses and regional stakeholders from Europe and Japan. It does that through activities such as business, matchmaking, training programs, information dissemination, and organisation of events. And over the course of 2020 to 2021, the Centre has organised and continues to organise a cycle of seminars and conferences gathering Japanese and European experts from sectors contributing to decarbonisation. So, Dr. Philippe de Taxi, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this online seminar. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Karen, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, good morning, people in Europe and in Japan, and welcome to this second day of our event. I would like to focus my quick opening remarks on 3 aspects which share the same topic, that is the operationalization of the EU and Japan goodwill to cooperate at the level of clusters, cities, and regions. How can we help them to know each other and to cooperate? And from that point of view, there are 3 points that I would like to highlight as 3 ways for the EU-Japan Centre to help you in finding the relevant partners on the other side, and to put together your efforts, your activities, so that you can reach win-win cooperation. First element is the continuity, because we have already started this with our EU-Japan Regional Cooperation Help Desk, managed by Claire in Japan and Seja in Europe. And in particular, we will continue to highlight existing cooperation between cluster cities, regions in Europe and their counterparts in Japan. We have done that with Osaka, with Kyushu, with Fukushima, and their counterpart in Europe, Vitagora, North Rhine-Westphalia. We will continue to highlight this and to also enable them to meet really via matchmaking event where we combine cluster cities and regions from both sides. Next event on that line will be between the existing cooperation between Saitama in Japan and Bayern Innov in Germany, and the topic will be on mechatronics and artificial intelligence. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we are the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation. So we are trying to connect businesses from Europe and Japan. And we know that many of those businesses, many of those startups and SMEs are indeed hosted by your clusters, your cities, your regions. So we are planning for next year a business matchmaking, B2B event. So in the field of green transition, decarbonization, and we plan to do it using all the virtual tools, and we will see if a physical event will be possible. That would be at the beginning of next year. I don't have the date yet, but we can keep you informed as soon as we know that. Third element that I would like to draw your attention to, because sometimes it's a bit underestimated. There is an increasing trend for the European and the Japanese stakeholders to cooperate and act jointly outside Japan, outside Europe, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. And we believe that is very important in the green transition to have this alliance between European and Japanese clusters, cities, and regions to act together vis-à-vis their counterparts in other parts of the world. And from that point of view, we will launch next year a specific help desk for this third country cooperation of European and Japanese stakeholders. Finally, I would like to finish my opening remarks by expressing my gratitude and sincere thanks to the team at the center, which has organized over the last years this one-year cycle of events, in particular Stéphane Ledoux. This series of events have been very successful. First of all, in terms of participation, we had several events with more than 1,000 participants, and also in terms of quality. So many thanks, Stéphane, and many thanks to all the people following us today for this second day of this fantastic event, where cluster cities and regions will have the opportunity to say what they do and also explore how they can cooperate with their counterparts on the other side. Many thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Dr. De Taxi. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot out of today's proceedings. You can, oh, there you go. I was just going to say you can turn off your camera, but your camera's already off. Thank you very much for that. By the way, if you're just joining us, if you weren't there at the very beginning when we opened, you're very, very welcome to this online conference. I'm Karen Coleman, a journalist and a broadcaster from Ireland, and I am moderating today's event. Now, it's time now for our first thematic session of the day and our third of the conference. And the theme is decarbonizing transport in cities. Reducing the environmental footprint of transport, of course, is a major challenge for all cities and regions, as the transport industry has been built on fossil fuels for more than a century. So from bicycle-friendly roads to smart public transport, from zero-emission vehicles to shared mobility, how do municipalities, regions, and transport operators tackle the CO2 emissions of urban and inter-urban mobility across Europe and Japan? Well, we're going to hear some ideas now on how that may happen. We're going to have 4 speakers providing 4 individual presentations of approximately 8 minutes each, and then they will be followed by a question and answer session. And that's when we would really like to hear from you too. Please put your questions in through the Q&A box on your Zoom screen. Can I again remind all our speakers to please stick to your allocated time? I will be coming on and interrupting very gently if we go over time with your presentations. And we're going to start each one of our sessions with a poll. So we're going to run our first poll now. So Stefan, if you can throw up our first poll. So which solution do you think has the most potential to cut CO2 emissions in urban transport? Do you think is it electric or hydrogen cars, more public transport, more cycling and walking, or less transport, for example, like teleworking, etc. By the way, multiple answers are allowed in this particular poll and for our next one. So feel free to continue to answer that. We're going to run that poll until we come to the question and answer session, and then we'll get the results of the poll. So far ahead and answer the poll as you like, and then we'll get to it once our 4 speakers have delivered their presentations. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker for this session. Helen Mulder is a senior advisor, strategic and international affairs with Utrecht City in the Netherlands, the most bicycle-friendly city in the world. And located in the center of mainland Netherlands, Utrecht is the 4th largest Dutch city. Its central position within the country makes it an important transport hub for both rail and road transport. It's also known as the cycling capital of the world, with a road system that's been designed for bicycle traffic with more than 30 years. And with a rapid increase in its population now expected until 2030, the city is adapting its cycling infrastructures and creating new ones. So Helen, you are very welcome to this conference. You can turn on your camera now and unmute your microphone, and I'll hand over it to you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for the nice introduction. Next slide, please. Well, I'm Erlijn Mulder, and today I will give you a short introduction on the city of Utrecht and I will share our challenges on urban planning and mobility with you. And I will give some insights on the way that we address them. Next slide, please. And the next. Utrecht is an old city. Next year, we celebrate our 900th anniversary, with roots even in Roman times. The old, highly ranked university attracts a lot of students to the city, which makes us also the youngest city. And we're the fourth largest city of the country. The Netherlands has over 17 million inhabitants and is one of the most densely populated country in the world. Utrecht is in the heart of the Netherlands. Next slide, please. It's the so-called mobility hub, with all highways passing by, Schiphol Airport over just a half an hour away, and with the largest train station of the country. Next slide, please. This is the central station. Next. We're also a world-class cycling city with 100,000 bicycles roaming through our city every day. Next slide, please. A lot of people and companies are attracted to Utrecht. It's the fastest growing city of the Netherlands, and we expect the growth to continue in the next 20 years. But more people means more movement. Next. A few years ago, for instance, we recorded the first bicycle traffic jam in the world. This is something we see every day. And with more mobility and more people comes air pollution and noise. Next. Next slide, please. We would like to grow as a city without the increase of the number of cars. Next. But we don't have enough public space for that. So we also want to have more space and more quality of life for our citizens and visitors. So how do we achieve that? That's a constant struggle, so to say. We decided to change our strategy and focus on the healthy urban living for everyone. We use the opportunities that we have in this growth, next, to improve our city and to make our city a healthy city for everyone. And when I say health, I mean much more than healthcare. Health is about healthy people. We see health in a broad and positive view. It's about the possibilities to cope with physical, emotional, and social challenges in life. It's about autonomy and control over your own life. And it's about equity and equal opportunities. Next. So healthy urban living was the starting point, and it needs an integral approach. It takes into account housing, work, mobility, but also green areas, sports, culture, services, education, and the energy system. We work towards a 10-minute city. Everything you need can be reached within 10 minutes walking or cycling. Next. So the road to zero emission means, next, a shift in thinking. How do we achieve accessibility and clean transport, and with an ever-increasing number of people? A few hints in this slide that I will tell more about, and the choices that we made as a city. Next. We prioritize sustainable mobility. We create more space for pedestrians, cyclists, and outstanding public transport. Public transport needs to be a better alternative than the car. All other transport must be as clean as possible. Next. So this is an example of the redesign of streets, from a car-centric street to a cycle-centric street. And we measured by doing this, we nudged people into other behavior, which meant 20% more cyclists and 30% less cars. Next. Next. We created the largest indoor bicycle facility in the world by 12,000 parking spots, 3 stories underground, the central station. The whole central station has over 30,000 parking spots. And this is an example of our electric cycling route, so that people can see where they can bike their bicycle in the city center. Next. This all makes a fine-grained network and a better alternative than the car to come to our city center. But the other thing is a new parking policy. We achieved new redesign of streets to get rid of our parking spots And our entrepreneurs even asked for these redesigns because they discovered they had an increase of people coming to their shops because it's so much nicer to come to a street where it's nice to stay. So quality of public space is a very big part of our new parking policy as well. Next. The third choice is stimulate electric cars and car sharing. Utrecht has the highest percentage of car sharing in the Netherlands, and it's also because we really stimulate getting rid of the car. Next slide, please. Even in this new urban area, Merwede, we create 12,000 houses, but it's not allowed to own your own car in this particular area. You can have a car, but you have to park it elsewhere. And we invest a lot in mobility as a service, walking and cycling routes, and a lot of greens as well. If we wouldn't have done this, we could only build half of the houses that we are creating now. Next. We invest highly in zero emission logistics. This is an example of our electric supply boat in the old canals. They are over 800 years old. And the electric boat provides supplies, but also collects waste from the restaurants and shop owners. Next. This strategy didn't come overnight. We learned some lessons the hard way, which I would like to share with you. Next. We have invested a lot in talking with people instead of at them. A lot of our citizens come up with bright ideas that we can learn a lot from. So we invest highly in all kinds of talks with our citizens on all kinds of subjects, creating a healthier city. Next. Next. Thank you. The focus on health really helped us in our urban dilemmas and the decisions that we had to make. So by putting health at the core of our policy, we also knew better which choices to make. And we also keep our partners highly involved. So together with universities, housing partners, companies, we try to find new solutions to create a healthier city. Next. We start with questions and not the solutions. This is an example of our bee-friendly bus stop. We didn't come up with this idea ourselves. There was a tender for new bus stops in the city, and we just asked, how can we create a sustainable bus stop? And one of the tender candidates came up with this bright idea. It went viral, and now the rest of all kinds of parties in the world have the same bus stops. Next. Next. We try, test, and fail also. So with trying and testing and piloting constantly in our city, like some sort of living lab, you can also adapt your strategy. This is an example of the Daphne Schippers Bridge. It's a cycling bridge, had huge protests from the citizens at first. And then we talked with the citizens and asked them, how can we create the solution to cross from one part of the city to the other? And somebody said, can't we do it on the top of the roof of the primary school? And now you can see the primary school, it has a green roof on top of it, and the cycling bridge really crosses the roof of the primary school and then goes over the canal and connects the old city and the new city, so to say. It's highly used at the moment, and we enjoy it very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen, and absolutely fabulous. It'll be really interesting to find out a little bit more about some of the initiatives, but really, really interesting, your approach to eco-friendly transport. Thank you so much. You can turn your camera off now and mute your microphone, and we will be joined by you again during the Q&A session. So from Utrecht in the Netherlands to Toyota City in Japan, our next guest is Kazuaki Yamai, the director of the Future City Promotion Division with Toyota City. And Toyota is located in north central Aichi Prefecture. The long-standing ties with Toyota Motor, several plants of the car manufacturer are located there, gave the city its current name. And to reduce the environmental footprint of transport, Toyota City now works on new forms of multimodal urban mobility, combining zero-emission individual vehicles and smart public transports. And Mr. Yamahi will talk more now about smart multimodal mobility in the city of cars. Hello to you, Mr. Yamahi. You are very welcome. I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, good to see you. I am Yamai with Toyota City Advanced City Promotion Division. Thanks for the opportunity. So now I'd like to present smart multi-mobility in Mobility City Toyota. Next slide, please. So allow me to introduce the city of Toyota. We have 420,000 people with a size of 918 square kilometers. The city has both urban and rural areas. Next slide, please. Our city houses headquarters of Toyota Motor Corporation. We are a center of high-tech industry. Toyota has produced a range of next-generation mobility, including fuel cell car, Mirai, and C-Pod, ultra-compact battery EV. So Toyota Eco Town is a facility that promotes advanced technology and SDGs. And we have received more than 300,000 visitors from more than 100 countries. And back in 2015, in cooperation with Nagoya University, we have participated in different international organizations and associations. And currently, we are using this facility to promote SDGs. And after COVID subsides, I hope you have an opportunity to come to see us and visit Eco-Full Town. And there are many cultural and sports facilities in the town. In 2019, Toyota Stadium, the city's landmark, hosted Rugby World Cup game. We hope that event, we do have a lot of exciting, attractive facilities. And the city has a lot of attractive urban area, but also ample nature. Agriculture is flourishing in Toyota. We are known for pears and peaches and rice. So as I said, Toyota is a big city that has both urban and rural areas. It has a railway that connects city center with core industrial areas. A road network connects core regional areas and provides access to rural area. People have access to mobility services without urban area. Though there are some challenges for those who travel from and to rural areas. So today I'd like to introduce our initiative to address that challenge. So next, I'd like to talk about our car pooling or sharing service in urban area. Sharing ultra-compact battery EVs is environmentally friendly and offers comfortable travel experiences in the city. Harmoride is a sharing service of COMS, single-seat ultra-compact EV. Users can drop the car off at a destination. The service is embedded in the transportation network of the city. And Toyota Share is a new initiative that was launched this fiscal year to see how vehicles are used by Toyota City on weekdays, and are available for members on weekend and holidays. We have only 2 EVs at this moment, but we aim at making the best use of idle asset on weekend and improve accessibility for citizens. And we are trying to promote EVs to contribute to realizing decarbonization. Next, here are some initiatives implemented in rural areas. We have been working with the University of Nagoya. And now if you look at the left top, we are using volunteers support. This is what we call Tasukiai project. This is a passenger car mobility matching service that connects volunteer with senior citizens who are in need of transportation needs. And if you look at the right bottom, this is what we call a Sato Mobi project. This is to offer people more opportunities to travel and enhance well-being. So this is something that we have been working on. Next, I'd like to talk about automation. We have been working with businesses and universities to test POC, proof of concept, of autonomous driving. In the area of connected vehicles, the city has upgraded ITS infrastructure to reduce traffic accidents and congestions. The slide shows a conceptual drawing for POC testing of safety awareness of drivers to be conducted with insurance company. Driving data is fed to a cloud system to analyze safety level of driving and reward points to incentivize people to drive safety. Regarding electrification of cars, we have introduced wheeled stand-up electronic mobility scooter called C-Walk. In addition to C-Pod, Toyota City is taking a lead to introduce new mobility. Various POC tests have proved effectiveness of the new mobility. And as you can see on the right bottom, we are using ultra-compact EVs for food delivery service to cope with the demand amid COVID. Toyota City has been working with business to promote a range of EV offerings. We are also working with universities as well. Amid COVID, people have concern of getting together. And a Sakura project started to promote the system to charge cars at home in case of emergency so that people don't necessarily have to go to a shelter to avoid crowd amid COVID. We also demonstrated operation of fuel cell buses and charging system, trying to use a next generation mobility system to mitigate impact of natural disasters. And 3 of the fuel cell buses are already up and running in the city of Toyota. So Toyota City has been working on solutions for mobility challenges and climate change by using various mobility options. We believe that demand for case and need to accept diversified values will further increase. Toyota City will continue to promote our multimodal mobility and work with you to address climate issues and other global challenges. Thank you for your kind attention.
And thank you very much, Mr. Yamahi. Again, very, very interesting to see those initiatives in Toyota. We look forward to talking with you a little bit later during the Q&A session. You can turn off your camera now and mute your microphone. Thank you. And by the way, if you have questions for Mr. Yamahi or indeed for Helen from Utrecht as well, please do put them in through the question and answer box on your Zoom screens. We'd really like to see what kind of questions you're interested in asking our panelists as well. So now it's my pleasure to welcome João Marana, the president of the Metro Mondego Coimbra in Portugal. And about 460,000 people live in the region of Coimbra, the 4th largest urban centre in Portugal. The closure of a local railway line in 2009 led to an increase in CO2 emissions and road congestion as cars became the only mobility solution for residents. So to tackle these issues, local public transport operator Metro Mondego now works on the transformation of this old railway into a 42-kilometre route dedicated to an electric bus rapid transit service. And João Marana is going to tell us a little bit more about this now. Good morning to you, as you're based in Europe, Mr. Marana. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I will try to give you some hints about the project we are now developing in Coimbra. The word that you will hear mostly will be next, and this is the case. So next slide, please. I will give you some hints mainly about where do we do this work, why do we intend to do it, what will be the main features of the project, and then we'll present some pictures about the project as well. So next slide, please. So we are developing the project at Coimbra, but the project also involves Miranda do Douro and Lausanne. Next slide, please. This area it has something like a little bit less than 200,000 inhabitants. Next, with very different densities, as you may see. In Coimbra, the density is is higher, but in Miranda do Douro and Lausanne, it is more, but not so significant. Next slide, please. So this is Miranda next, and then Lausanne, the other municipality, the other county that is in in the project. Next slide, please. So why do we do this this project? Mainly to reduce the carbon footprint through increased public transport and facilitating soft modes and reducing private cars. Next. We also intend to perform a urban regeneration mainly in Coimbra in order to facilitate mobility, to regenerate some critical areas and to promote urban densification. Next, please. Another and a central issue here is that there is a rail infrastructure that was available for quite a long time that was closed in 2010. And we intend to use that rail infrastructure to develop a new bus electric system, the transit system. Next, please. So, what are the main features of the project? There are two very different parts of the network. The first one in the suburban area, with a length of something like 30 kilometers. It has only one lane, so it is more complex to operate in the future, but with much more infrastructure aspects to evaluate. The maximum speed, it will be something like 70 kilometers per hour, and all the BRT will be done in a dedicated road with priority at intersections in order to facilitate the capacity of the system. Next, in the urban area, there will be 2 lanes, of course. The length of the infrastructure will be something like 12 kilometers. With we will have 2 lines, and the maximum speed, of course, it will be lower, something like 50 kilometers per hour. And with also some dedicated way of priority and priority at the intersections. Next, the rolling stock we will use, it will be electric buses with battery powered. There will be charging both at the depot at the end of the line in order to guarantee the capacity of the batteries to perform these long distances, something like 40 to 50 kilometers maximum. And there will be optical guidance at tunnels and stops in order to guarantee the safety of the operation, mainly at the tunnels. There will be a lot of other technical systems in the rolling stock, of course. Next. So what would be the operation we expect to have? It will have something like a frequency of about 1 vehicle every 5 minutes in the rush hours in the urban area, and something like 1 vehicle every 15 minutes in the suburban area, maximum 1 vehicle every 13 minutes during rush hours. Comparing with the service that we had with the train, we will have something like 50 suburban services per day when compared with the 17 services we had when the trains were operating the line. Next. There will be also, we are also developing an important process of transport integration, either physical and ticketing integration. Physical, to guarantee that all the modes of transport are integrated in order to facilitate the transfer between modes, so to minimize the friction to do those transfers between modes. And also we are creating an integrated tariff to facilitate the use of the system and to guarantee that the costs will be lesser than they are today. Next, please. So in terms of investment, the global figure is something like 150 million euros, most of it in infrastructure, but also in vehicles, in technical systems, and in some additional investments like depot and ticketing. Next. So the demand forecast we have for this BRT system will be something like 12,000 passengers per day per way in the most heavy demand on the city center, and something like 1,500 passengers per day per way in the peripheral areas. Next. This is the other line in the city center that will have also something like 9,000 passengers per day per way. Next, please. I will show some pictures of the project very briefly. So this is the image we expect to have in the town hall area. Next. Then some regenerated area in the city center. Next. So this is the regenerated area in the city center, how it is today. And I will show in the next slide how it will be in the future. Next. A little bit better, of course. Next slide, please. Then this is another perspective of the town hall area from the north part. Next, please. This is the BRT channel near the depot we will build within the next year. Next. This is the interface at the peripheral area of Lausanne, the municipality of Lausanne. Next, please. This will be the depot. Next.
Just sorry to interrupt, Mr. Marana, but we're running a little bit short of time.
Yes,
so if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, of course. I will finish very briefly. This will be the train station refurbished. Next, please. This will be the BRT at the train station. Next, where you'll see the back-to-back system working. And this is the timeline for the project that started in September, the works in the suburban area. Then this year, the works in the urban area will start. Delivery of vehicles will happen in July 23. And then the first phase of operation will start in December 2023. So next slide, please. So thank you very much for your time, for your attention, and sorry for the 1 minute, 20 seconds later, I finished my presentation. Thank you, Karen, for your patience.
No, it was excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate your cooperation on the time there, because yesterday we ran way over time. So we're really trying to keep on time with our presentations this morning. Thanks very much, Mr. Marana, and we look forward to hearing more about Coimbra and the light rail system when we come back for the Q&A. Now, our final speaker is Hugues Châtain with the Next Generation Mobility team with the international collaboration manager with Odakyu Railway in Machida and Kawasaki in Japan. And Kawasaki and Machida are located in the southwest of the greater Tokyo urban area. In these two cities, local transport company Odakyu Railway is conducting experiments of new on-demand public transport services, and on-demand mobility can contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and urban space congestion due to transportation by providing a convenient alternative to private cars when traveling to a railway station. So, Mr. Châtain, you are very welcome. I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Karen, for the introduction. So I'm Luc Chatin from the Next Generation Mobility team of ODAQ, and I will speak of on-demand mobility next, please. So ODAQ is one of the major private railway company in Japan. We carry every day 2 million people over 120 kilometer long network, starting from Shinjuku, the busiest station in the world, heading through the western suburb of Tokyo and reaching touristic area like Hakone. We also operate buses and taxis. Next. So ODAQ have just defined long-term objectives to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And we set up several actions to achieve these goals. Among those, there are the shift to eco-friendly public transportation, which includes development of on-demand transportation. Next. First, as a railway company, we already have implemented some measures to improve energy consumption and then CO2 reduction. So first one, we just completed the quadrupling of tracks of our line around Tokyo, and it helped to reduce the congestion of trains on the tracks. And when you reduce congestion, you improve the energy consumption and then reduce CO2 emissions. We also introduced some new rolling stock with energy saving devices like new inverters or new regenerating braking. And we set up some batteries along the line. So to store energy when trains are braking, and this energy can be reused when trains are accelerating. Next. We also operate zero carbon limited express trains, and we have installed several eco-friendly equipment in stations and along the line. Next. But train is already quite efficient in terms of CO2 emissions. So if we want to achieve our goals, we have to do more. And one thing is to encourage people to switch from their private car to public transportation. But to do so, we have to provide efficient and convenient alternatives so that people can find the same liberty in transport as they have when they travel by car. Next, please. So at ODAQ, we have defined a new strategy 3 years ago to develop mobility, which is based on two major pillars. One is the development of what we call Mass as a Service app, which is a smartphone app that integrates all the transportation services and services at destination into one single app. And the second pillar is the development of the operation of new mobility that will supplement public transportation system, like autonomous driving vehicles and on-demand transportation. So next. So what is on-demand transportation? This is an intermediate transportation system between buses and taxis. Like buses, people share the same vehicle, and there are some stops, but much more stops than buses. But with this system, you can have a similar flexibility as taxis in a sense that people book their ride and the vehicle will go only where people want to get in and get off along an optimized route. Next, please. So we think that on-demand transportation system can contribute to CO2 emissions. For example, there will be, because of declining of population in Japan, there may be up to 20% of the bus lines that could disappear within 10 years, and people will shift to private cars if we do not provide them with sustainable alternative, and on-demand transportation could be this alternative. And also, elderly people are encouraged to surrender their driving license because they do not have the health to drive, and they tend to use taxis instead because it's comfortable for them. But on-demand transportation could be as equally comfortable but more efficient in terms of CO2 emission and also cheaper for them. So next. So we made two experiments of on-demand transportation. One, it was in a suburban area centered around one of our railway stations, one of our busiest stations, which is Shinyori-gaoka. This is an area composed mainly of private houses, where there is a need of on-demand transport, but more like taxis. Next, please. So here in this area, people usually get on public transport to commute, to go to work, but when it comes to go shopping or for other purposes, they tend to use private cars, which create congestion around the station. So that's why we choose this area for our experiment. So here, like if we are more need to have transport closest to taxi, so we take a system which is called dynamic meeting point, where people just have to indicate where they want to get in and when they want to get off, and the system will indicate where to get in, what stop to get on the board and to get off among the 500 points. Next, please. So we made another experiment in another suburban area. This time is made of public housing buildings. This area is connected to our station by a 20-minute ride by bus, but there is a need to connect all those buildings to this bus. And that's why we deployed during this experiment, this on-demand transportation. Next, please. Here we use a simpler system where there are less stops. There is only 20 or something, so it's closer to buses. But and people have to choose directly the stop they want to get in and get off. But and the vehicle will also calculate optimized itinerary. But thanks to this is simpler system, so cheaper, so we can provide a fare which are also closer to buses. Next, please. So it's maybe too early to understand really if on-demand transportation will really contribute to replace private car, but we have made some surveys during the experiments that show that encouraging number of people would have used their private car or consider to use their private car if on-demand transportation service does not exist. So that encourages us to continue and to try to develop commercial system. Next, please. The analysis of the data also shown that although we designed a system to bring people to the station, it showed that people also used the on-demand transportation to travel within the area, even if not going to the station. So that let us think that this is really a new transport system which has a local dimension and not only a feeder to railway line. Next, please. And just to finish, I want to say that all those on-demand transportation were provided through our mass mobility application and platform, which was designed to integrate this kind of new mobility from different partners and also different hubs. But this is another story, so I will end here. So thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Hugo. That's again very interesting. Now, please, can you stay with us? So you keep your camera on. And can I ask our previous three speakers to put your cameras back on? Is Mr. Yamahi there as well? If you can put your camera back on, and we'll go to our Q&A session. We've already getting lots of questions in, but before we start the questions, let's have a look at the results of our poll. So Stefan, very interesting. Okay, so the question you were asked is, what solution do you think has the most potential to cut CO2 emissions in urban transport? So just a little over 50% of you, 52% said electric hydrogen cars, 49% say more public transport, 33% say more cycling and walking, and 38% say less transport, so teleworking, etc. Okay, interesting. Helen, maybe quick reaction to you, because you talked a lot about cycling and the initiatives of cycling in Utrecht, but 52% of people say the solution lies more in electric and hydrogen cars. What do you say to that?
Well, to be honest, I think it should be a combination of that. I mean, Utrecht is quite a compact city, so we can do a lot by cycling. But in a city like Tokyo or, highly dense urban areas, sometimes you need public transport or a car, and then preferably an electric car, and then preferably a shared electric car, in my opinion.
There were questions in specifically for you, Helen, and I'll ask you first. So how did you fund, one of our listeners wants to know, or our viewers online wants to know, how did you fund the infrastructures for bicycles in Utrecht? And how did you involve residents? I know you answered it yourself in the Q&A, but for those who may not have seen it, maybe you can answer that again.
It's a combination, I think. We don't fund everything ourselves. The national government funds infrastructure for bicycles as well, because the Netherlands has a fine-grained network of bicycle infrastructure in the country as well. And the province is very up to our strategy as well. So they contribute, especially for the bicycle highways, you know, from the surrounding villages to our city. We need those bicycle highways. As a matter of fact, we are creating a bicycle highway from Amsterdam to Utrecht at the moment. It has a course of 35 kilometers, and you can cycle by e-bike within, I don't know, an hour and a half to Utrecht for that. And we don't fund that ourselves. But by prioritizing the bicycle, we also prioritize funding for that.
That's really interesting, that particular line then, or channel that you're talking about. How are you getting the cooperation of those whose presumably land will be used for that cycleway?
Yeah, it's never easy. Everybody knows that negotiation takes time, and sometimes you have to take your loss and start all over again. And we had the idea of the bicycle highway from Amsterdam to Utrecht. I think that's an idea of already 20 years old, and now we are going to create it. So yeah, sometimes you need time to invest in relationships, invest in mutual ideas as well, and then grab the opportunity when everybody is at hand. And we have a left-wing city council that helps as well.
Okay, very interesting. Let's go to you, Mr. Yamahi. We've got a question in from you. In addition to the motorized mobility solutions that you introduced, does Toyota City have any plan to support bicycle transport? Mr. Yamahi.
Well, regarding Toyota City for bicycle support, on a street, we do have a bicycle dedicated lane. We have a bicycle specific lane so that riders can safely drive. So in terms of infrastructure development, we extend support for bicycle riders. And also we do have a bicycle sharing or pooling system so that many people can use bicycle. But I think what we have is not good enough. I think there is a room for improvement. So I'd like to learn from cities who are taking part in today's webinar so that we can do a better job.
Okay, and just in terms of Toyota, again, you're obviously working with Toyota in terms of the smart cars, but what other kind of partners, industrial partners, will be needed to provide the kinds of equipments and the buses and the other modes of transport, maybe apart from Toyota, for the eco-friendly vehicles in the future? That's again to you.
Yes, in terms of eco-friendly vehicle, I think that railway plays a crucial role. I think railway is a must. In Toyota City, there are 3 railway lines available. And from railway, people can switch to buses, another public transportation mode. So the transportation network, I think it has to be established. People can move around, not just with train, but also buses. So we need to work with train operators and bus operators. I think collaboration is a must. And I spoke about sharing system. People are helping each other. So if public transportation is not available, I think we need a system to make sure that people have access to.
Okay, and maybe the same question to you, João Marana, because there was that same question for the Metro Mondego again. What is the industrial partner that will provide the equipments, the buses for your electric bus rapid transport system? You just need to unmute your microphone, actually.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So we are now evaluating the bids that were presented in the public tender procedure that we launched. So at this time, we did not award the contract yet, but we expect to do it until the end of the year. So we made a public tender, and it is not decided yet, but we expect it to decide it in a very short term.
There's another question in about financial support for your project. Could you explain, please, a little bit more about the financing part of the project? That's still for you, Mr. Marana. Will you receive financial support from the European Union for it?
Yes, the project will be financed in terms of the infrastructure at a rate of 85%. The infrastructure that will be done, the contract is already in place between the ERDF funding program of Portugal and the infrastructure company. And then in what concerns the rolling stock, there will be also some funding from the European Union ERDF funds. So in global figure, it will be something like 80% of the project will be financed by the ERDF or cohesion fund.
And you mentioned in your presentation, you show that interesting map where you're going to integrate the railway line with the other modes of transport. So presumably cycle lanes and maybe regular transport. I can imagine that must be very challenging to try and do that within a current infrastructure. How are you going to get around those challenges?
Okay, that's one of the major problems, but one of the main potentials we are trying to use in the project. So there will be an important, very significant transfer of passengers between train at the main station in Coimbra. Main station of Coimbra, of course, connects with the rest of the country in terms of trains, and there will be a very important infrastructure there. Transfer between modes will be there, and we hope that we are also preparing some major interchanges between the BRT system and the bus network in some specific places in order to make an adequate articulation between the public transport modes. Besides that, of course, there will be some places to make some park and ride, mainly at the peripheral stations, some park and ride facilities. Some of them are already in place, and there will be one or two more that will be built within the next years as well.
Okay.
Just one more, just to add one more thing. Cycling in Coimbra is not so popular because the city is very hilly. So probably within the next years, the cycling will be more popular because of the electrical bikes, but nowadays is not very, very popular. But for sure, we will have to evaluate the situation with the bike within the next years. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. A question for you, Hugues Châtain. Are you cooperating with the MAS Alliance in Europe, MAS standing for Mobility as a Service? And an additional question, have you witnessed a change of behavior from the users?
So we are developing our own MAS tool, which I mentioned, which is EMAT, which is a new tool to gather, to provide information on trips and to integrate as much as possible trains, buses, and also bikes and taxis in one single map. And we have deployed this 2 years ago, a new version last year. And your question was about collaboration.
Yes. So the question is, have you witnessed a change of behavior from the users? So, this would be interesting in terms of, you talked about shared, it was something that struck me, you talk about shared transportation, but when people go shopping, because obviously they're carrying extra baggage, maybe
Exactly.
they're less, they're less inclined to go for shared mobility.
Yes. So we made some surveys that show that yes, people, and also we offered some, at shopping facilities, we offered free rides to encourage people to use public transportation. And so when they go shopping to our shopping center, they can get free ride to get back home, and then they can go back to the shopping center next time. And we analyzed some data. We showed that some people really adopted this way of to go shopping instead of using their own car. And also, as I mentioned, we have made some surveys that show that people could, at least some of the trip, they could replace their trip by own car to switch to on-demand transportation. Because like you mentioned, yes, when you go shopping, you have some package to carry, but because on-demand transportation is like a car, you can carry them inside, and the vehicle will drop you close to your home. So it's also as convenient as a car, and you don't have to worry about how to park and so on.
And maybe I can put that point back to you, Helen. Maybe you would like to comment on that as well, So, because again, it was interesting, you talked about the fact that people want streets clean of cars. So if there are to be cars, they must be parked somewhere else. But what if you live in a high-story building and you've got, a lot of bags from your shopping? How do you encourage people to deal with maybe the more challenging logistics of that?
It is possible to park your car for a short amount of time, of course. It's just that having long parked vehicles as a fundamental element in the design of your street is a different type of choice. And we really chose to get rid of those long-term parking spots in the streets, because they have a huge impact on the way that you how do you say that? That you appreciate the public space as a visitor, as a pedestrian, cyclist, a citizen as well. So the redesign of these streets, we never did it alone. We always did it with the citizens in the street, the areas, and the entrepreneurs as well. So yeah, that was for us a surprise, so to say, that they even asked for it as well, because they have benefits from those highly attractive public spaces as well.
And there's another question, just very quickly, if you can, maybe Helen, answer it, because I want to ask you all about cooperation between Europe and Japan as well. But the shift to bicycles is difficult to cope with for large numbers of people and long distance in big cities. Is there anything else you're doing to cope with this? Absolutely. The longer distances, you can't cycle several hundred kilometers.
Yes, we do. As Joe already mentioned, the e-bike is a game changer for us as well. We are also redesigning bicycle infrastructure at the moment, because the e-bike is a lot faster than the normal bike, and you can really cross more kilometers with that. And what was the other question? The types of interventions. Well, we fund if you would like to purchase a bike, our companies fund part of the purchase as well. So we really stimulate, and that's a national government thing. We stimulate purchasing of bikes, and also to choose the bike over the car or even public transport if possible.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me go back to you, Mr. Yamahi. Just very quickly on how are you going to power these electric bicycles? Because yesterday we heard a lot about, you know, deployment of local renewable energy. But how do you power the sort of vehicles you were talking about? Can you power them with decarbonized sources? Do you have other ways of using renewable electrical sources rather than regular sources of energy for those electrical vehicles?
Well, regarding energy issue, in Toyota City, there are a lot of PV panels, solar panels. Although the size is not big, but we do have onshore wind turbine, and we do have a biomass power generator that uses waste or garbage. So we do actually have access to renewable energy sources in driving EV using a renewable energy. The power is fed to EVs. That's what we're aiming at. And for example, we can install a carport on top of charging station. This is something we started working on since 2011. And we do have multiple charging stations in the city in order to make the best use of renewable energy for EVs. So this is something that we extend support to them. And regarding FCV, fuel cell vehicles, we are also trying to use hydrogen in cooperation with industry and businesses. So with that, we are trying to make the best use of renewable energy to facilitate travel of people. That's where we are at.
Okay, very good. Mr. Morano, just very quickly back to you. Are any of you involved in cooperations with Japan, for example, for your eco-friendly transport system?
Until now, no, we didn't have any cooperation with people from Japan, but we are very interested in it because, of course, the other experiences that are being made outside Europe might be quite interesting for us to learn with them, and we would be very, very proud to give some information on our situation and our experience to the other countries in the world. So not by now, but we are very interested in doing that.
Okay, thank you. And the same question to you, maybe, Hugues Châtain, any collaborations with European interests in this? And also, I'd love to get your views on renewable energy sources for example, railways or smart cars.
Okay, so for collaboration, what we would like to do is, we have our mass tour in Japan for the area of our lines, and in Europe, several players are also developing their mass tools and their own areas. So what we would like to do is connection between each other mass tools, so that when people can. Well, now, because of the pandemic of COVID, we cannot travel abroad, or it's quite difficult to come from Europe to Japan, but we hope it will resume soon. And so to encourage people to use public transportation in each other areas, a good way could be to connect other applications so that people, when they go to a country they don't really know, they will already, before the departure, know what ticket they can buy and what public transportation they can use, and maybe they will use less taxi and this kind of more polluting transport. And for the renewable energies, well, I mentioned that we are making a trial of express trains which have zero carbon emissions, which means that we have a partnership with our power supplier who guarantee that the energy which is consumed by our trains are provided through new energies and clean energies. So that's what I can say. And also we expect for our taxis and buses operation, we expect to one day to shift to electric vehicle, but it's a long-term plan.
Okay, well, look, on that point, we will leave it. But thank you so much to all of you, to Helen Mulder, Kazuaki Yamai, João Marana, and Hugues Chatain. Fascinating presentations and discussions. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your views. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, you can stay behind the scenes and watch the rest of the webinar as well. Thank you very much. You can close off your cameras now and mute your microphones, because we're going to move on. And by the way, thank you so much for all the questions we got in. Please do keep them in for the next session as well, because this is also going to be really interesting. And just put them in through the question and answer box on your Zoom screen. So our next thematic session now is on low carbon housing and construction, and from raw material procurement for construction to energy consumption during the life cycle. The housing sector is one of the largest emitters of CO2, both in Europe and Japan. So how do local governments steer the construction industry towards low carbon buildings? And how can environmentally friendly efforts in the housing sector be combined with social benefits for tenants? What techniques and technologies, from biomaterials to energy efficiency systems, are being developed by local innovators to reduce the carbon footprint of residential and commercial buildings? Well, these are some of the questions we'll be exploring during this session. And again, we have 4 speakers providing 4 individual presentations of around 8 minutes each. Again, a gentle reminder to all of you presenting for this session to please stick to your allocated time. Then we will have a Q&A session following that. But let's kick it off now with another poll. So Stefan, if you can bring up our poll question, please. So the poll question for you to answer is, what do you think makes a more climate-friendly house or apartment? Do you think it's better insulation, smart appliances, use of renewable materials to build the house in the first place, or use of renewable energy to power the house? 4 interesting options for you there. Multiple answers are allowed, so you can continue to answer this question as you hear more speakers. And then when the last speaker has delivered his or her presentation, we will get the results of that poll up. So now we're going to move to our first speaker, and I'd like to welcome Shoji Makihala, the Planning Officer in the Housing and Community Development section with Totitori Prefecture. And Totitori is the least populous prefecture in Japan. It's renowned for its agricultural products, and Totitori is located in the south of Honshu, Japan's main island. The prefecture has one of the most ambitious programs to reduce the climate impact of the housing sector. This includes subventions for low emission houses, promotion of wood construction and insulation standards designed to cut heating and cooling construction by 70% compared to national standards. So really looking forward to finding out more about this now. And Mr. Shoji Makihala, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You're very welcome, and you can start your presentation now.
はい、鳥取県庁住まいまちづくり課の牧原と申します。
Hello, this is Makihara with Totori Prefecture. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to introduce our project called Nest. Once again, I really appreciate the opportunity to share our initiative. Totori Prefecture is located in the western part of Japan. We have the least populated prefecture, and we are blessed with nature. In winter, we have a lot of snow. You can enjoy seasons. So if you have an opportunity, please come to visit us, Totori. Next slide, please. So when it comes to housing, there are 2 important performances. One is about seismic resistance, and second is energy saving. As you know, Japan is an earthquake-prone country. We have experienced a lot of earthquakes. So with that, legislation or the laws have been amended, and we have more stringent registration. But when it comes to energy saving, we don't have a legally binding regulation. Non-insulated houses are technically allowed. And you can see more people die in winter. You see the breakdown by prefecture. You may think that more people will die in colder part of Japan, but in fact, the coldest place in Japan, Hokkaido, has at least a percentage increase in terms of mortality rate in winter. But Tochigi or Kagoshima, warmer areas have higher percentage increase of mortality in winter. Totally also is one of the highest percentage increase. Hokkaido is a very cold place in Japan. A lot of houses are highly insulated. So on the, that's what's behind this statistics. And that's not the case in warmer area. Instead, houses are not really well appreciated in warmer area. In Japan, there are a lot of people died from traffic accident. Around 4,000 people die from accident. But in fact, more people die while taking bath, 4 times as large as those who are killed by traffic accident because of heat shock. In 2018, WHO recommended people to keep the temperature at 18 degrees or more inside the house. And with that, people are said to be able to stay healthy. And highly insulated houses can prevent condensation, mold, tick. And according to a study, people who are suffering from atopic dermatitis and allergy got better. And you may think that high blood pressure, heat shock symptoms are for the elderly people, but in fact, highly insulated housing brings health benefit to all generations, including children and the elderly people. And here are the standards for energy saving. Lower performance sits on the left-hand side of the chart. I know that in the West, a more stringent standard has been introduced, but a Japanese energy saving standard is non-binding, and it's not as stringent in comparison to the West. And the new constructions, the contribution is bigger in Japan, but we need to catch up with the West. So we decided to introduce 3 levels of standard, I would say, which are on par with the that of the West. Again, our prefecture is a less populated prefecture. Because of the size, smaller size, we are capable of working with the industry and the business operators. The standard asks for insulation and air tightness standard. And you can see the temperature, indoor temperature. In the past, people assumed that energy saving required a patient living room may be warm, but not in a bathroom or restroom. But according to Totori's standard, you don't have to suffer from patient, and you can reduce the risk of suffering from heat shock, and also minimize the gap in terms of temperature. Air tightness is also important. With higher air tightness, you are able to ventilate indoor air on a regular basis. So amid COVID, air tightness is also attracting a lot of attention. The importance of air tightness is actually getting higher. So if you have a high efficient or insulated construction materials, you may have to spend more money. But if you can save operational costs, you are able to get a return on investment. So again, our standard is more stringent than the national standard. And our standard was welcomed by a lot of designers and construction contractors. But also we have to make sure that landlord does understand the benefits of installing high efficient and construction materials. So that is why we are sharing feedbacks from landlords who used Nest. A lot of people say that I am less stressed because I don't have to suffer from cold at the morning. And you don't really need to use a lot of heaters thanks to highly insulated construction materials. So in order to promote the construction, we also introduced the grant system. People may not know the benefit of high insulated housing. In order to share information, we ask our contractors or local contractors to introduce grant system to landlords and customers. So again, we are aiming at 2050 decarbonized society, and we are trying to make Nest a standard for new construction by 2030. But a new construction alone is not good enough in terms of energy saving. So in Japan, existing houses are not highly insulated today. We need to accelerate converting existing houses to energy saving houses in order to achieve decarbonized society. But there are some people who are not able to finance by themselves to renovate their houses. Construction costs may vary from house to house depending on the condition. Consumers may not be able to assess whether they are spending enough money or less money. So we are extending support to people so that they can choose appropriate option in renovating their houses with the use of financial support from the government, local and central government. We encourage people to install renewable energy system, including PV, so that we can achieve carbon neutral. Again, we are trying to promote Nest. It's not easy, but we will continue to promote highly insulated housing in cooperation from operators and contractors. This is all for me. Thank you so much for your attention.
And thank you very much, Mr. Makihari, very interesting. And if you do have questions about Totori and the building methods there, please do put them in through the question and answer box, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions during the Q&A session. Well, from Totori in Japan to Ljubljana in Slovenia, we're now going to hear from Frederica Nez, the head of department of the wood industry cluster in Ljubljana. And Slovenia is the third most forested country in Europe. And to take full advantage of this asset, woodworking companies and research institutions established in 1999 the wood industry cluster. The cluster supports collaborative work between its members, including projects focused on the role of wood in decarbonizing the housing and construction sector. And a recent initiative focuses on creating a wooden smart home with a reduced carbon footprint. Fascinating stuff. So very much looking forward to hearing from you, Frederica Nez. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. As I was introduced, I come from the National Building Institute, but I'm representing here the wood industry cluster. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, thank you. So before I start with some facts about Slovenia, you can read casually in the meantime. Of course, in Slovenia, we also have introduced energy efficiency program. We have incentives for longer time now, but we have realized during the years that there is more to the housing than just energy saving and energy efficiency incentives, energy efficiency measures. This is why we want to build a step further, so to go towards smart, zero emission, wood-based, bio-based building. First, some facts about Slovenia. Slovenian wood is worth about 1.5 billion euros, Slovenian wooden industry, but it has 50% of export share. It is strongly supported in national strategies, and Slovenia is third in forest coverage in Europe and among top 30 of forest cover in the world. So we really have a lot of wood. Next slide, please. And today I'm going to present you three different approaches, all for the new buildings. First one is so-called Home 24 project. This is the smart home, as you will see. Then there is a larger project called Obsavi. This is the working name at the moment. And the third one is very interesting. It addresses the new existing buildings and what we can do with cross-laminated timber solutions in existing buildings. Next slide, please. So first, the Home 24. This is the project that is currently under final touches of the development. These days it's being occupied. And as for the goals, you can see the render here, but you will see in the pictures that the real building is very, very much alike. So the goals that we had here are listed here. So we wanted to demonstrate, not only build, but also demonstrate smart home. We want to be net energy self-sufficient, including energy for local mobility. So we wanted to extend the borders. We said not only living has to be provided by the energy harvesting at the building, but also local mobility, not 1,000 kilometers, but daily commute. Then, of course, we wanted to optimize energy use to the maximum extent. One of the important issues was negative total global warming potential. So the CO2 emissions, meaning also not only operational phase, but also embodied emissions. And the basic idea here is multi-use space. So this was before the corona. We have said that we need on the market a building that will be able to be used as home and the workspace in one building, but not in one building as such. Now, this is a little bit confusing. The thing behind is that there is a section of the building that it has its own entrance. It's not directly connected to the other parts of the buildings, but if you go from home to work, you have 5 meters of walk under the roof. Next slide, please. So how to realize that? We have introduced several technological solutions. You can read them here. So we have developed a new wood-based structural system that is almost entirely based on bio-based materials, or almost entirely based on wood. We have introduced smart furniture, the one that talks to you, lets some orders to you, reacts to your mood. Obviously, we have had energy harvesting in form of PV modules. The area is sufficient for local mobility, as I said already. Efficient joinery is a standard in Slovenia already, so we are talking about U-value 0.6 or less. Everything is digitalized. And everything is controllable by smart home platform, and the whole building is ran in form of digital twin, meaning a lot of sensors enabling, not now, I must confess, but in the near future, the predictive control, meaning that responding to weather forecast and similar inputs. Then we have smart appliances installed, in-building charger, obviously. We have also demonstrated bidirectional heat pump for district heating. This is not needed for this specific house, but we wanted to do that because we wanted to link to the community and the district as well. Next slide, please. And these are some pictures of the real construction of the real building. There is a lot of wood inside, as you can see, as linings, as internal linings as well. The whole building is very, very nice and very pleasant to live in. Next slide, please. This is from the inside. You can see everything is, of course, whatever can be done is made of wood. Open space. Here, the bottom right picture is this specific space which is intended for work, but can be transformed afterwards in the life of the building. Also, maybe as a small condo for multi-generational house or whatever. So we were striving here really for flexibility and merging functions on one geographical location in order to minimize transport, in order to be as flexible as possible, in order to enable people who have learned that work from home is actually a good idea, not for everybody, but for some people it is. We wanted to put on the market some very good solution for that. Next slide, please. This brings me to another project that we are developing. This one is not that far. But the specialty here is that we have a systemic investor from Slovenia. So this is oh yeah, I had to say that the first project was co-funded by Slovenian government. The second one is not. It is okay. The transition is very slow. The second one is funded from Invest of Slovenia, the fund for housing. It is ongoing, but we want to demonstrate the load-bearing frames made of wood and cross-laminated timber made of wood. We want to see what is the difference in our situations. It has basically the same goal, so I will not repeat that, but we are targeting larger buildings and also connected to the district. Next slide, please. One thing we want to offer here as well and test the response is one flat. It will be fully equipped with everything. So it is, you only come and start living inside. Of course, with special care with light comfort, thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, etc. So one flat will be equipped with full design, with furniture, with appliances, with everything. And we'll see whether this is interesting for the market. Next slide, please. And the last section is retrofit with cross-laminated timber. We have here a special case of an old building that has on highly valued ground. It's a little bit problematic, probably because the earthquake, like Japan, also Slovenia is an earthquake-prone area, maybe not that much, but still earthquake-prone area. And there has been a solution developed and tested in Slovenia and in the institutions that has proven that you can do something using wood. Now, after the testing, this is the time for the application. Next slide, please. And this is the current situation we have in these buildings and what is going to be done. So first, the static retrofit is done. This is the red part. You can see some additions, and this makes then the building well statically developed. But not only static retrofit, also energy retrofit will be included. These blue parts are actually thermal insulation. Thermal insulation will be added. Of course, the big question arises because this is the private building. Who will pay for that? It's not cheap. And the thing is that because the retrofit is light, and because the addition of the wood on the top is light, it is possible to add a floor on the top. And adding from selling that area, it should be more or less sufficient for the full retrofit. So it is a way of how you can do the retrofit, even if it is financially demanding for the owners. One should know that in Slovenia, most houses are owned by private persons. So yeah, even if in these cases it is possible, if you have a smart approach to use and realize that in this case by selling additional floor or constructing additional floor. The last slide, please. So for the end, the conclusions are written here. In Slovenia, we have a very well developed and capable industry of food and prefabricated houses. Of course, we are following the European trends. We want to build as much as possible new buildings absolutely with negative global warming potential, meaning negative CO2 emissions. It can also be applied to a certain extent, not in full, but at least to a certain extent to an existing building stock. But we are using gradual approach. If you're following the development of wood buildings, we don't want to race who will build the tallest building or the fastest building or whatever. We are rather striving for the best one. I hope we will succeed. We have clear technical capabilities, and of course, we have the possibility, because of a lot of wood, to establish the full wood chain and explore the full wood chain together. So embracing the digitalization in what is, I might say, a traditional sector which has a little bit of a difficulty for digitalization. But we're looking forward into the future with confidence because we have all the elements. We just need to connect those elements, and I'm sure it will be interesting for well beyond the borders of Slovenia. So thank you very much for your attention. This is all from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, Frederic. And I think there'll be a lot of questions for you as well, not least the cost, particularly the first house that you showed us, the cost of actually constructing that. Stay with us behind the scenes. You can turn your camera off and mute your microphone, and we'll bring you back on again for the Q&A, but fascinating presentation. Many thanks. Now, our next speaker is Toshiko Shiba, the Deputy Director for Carbon Policy Planning with the Tokyo Metropolitan government in Japan. And with 14 million inhabitants, the Tokyo metropolitan area is one of the most populated in the world. In 2020, the Tokyo metropolitan government released its zero carbon strategy, which aims to place the capital on the pathway towards carbon neutrality by 2050. Accounting for 70% of the emissions, buildings are a key target in this strategy. And through a comprehensive set of measures, Tokyo will guide both new and existing constructions towards zero emissions. Now, to hear more about those plans, I'm going to hand over now to Toshiko Shiba. A very warm welcome to you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I am Chiba from Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So prior to COP26, this is quite timely, and I'm delighted to be able to join this valuable opportunity. So Tokyo is a venue where there are lots of Japanese and non-Japanese companies are concentrated, and as mentioned, 14 million people live here. So zero emission is a shared goal for the world. But in decarbonized society, Tokyo would like to be a city that continuously attracts people and firms. And today I would like to take time to explain our initiatives in the area of building as well as our future outlook. First, Tokyo, 70% or so of energy consumption is accounted for by buildings. So in 2000, we started energy saving initiatives targeting buildings. Currently, from the stage of the construction of building all the way to the use of building, we are working on initiatives to save energy and expand use of renewable energy. For example, green energy program of buildings with gross floor area of 2,000 square meters or above. The certain requirements are imposed, such as insulation and other eco-friendly requirements. And also, Tokyo Cap and Trade initiative has been introduced for large-scale buildings, including office buildings. So this is a mechanism where the large-scale buildings have to meet the large reduction obligation. And as for the small to medium-sized buildings, carbon reduction reporting has been introduced, where those firms and operators have to submit reports. Next. In green building mechanism, we are currently in this situation since the start of the program. For new buildings, insulation value has improved continuously. However, some buildings stay just above the threshold, and level 3 is the highest level. Even among the buildings in level 3, still there's variance in terms of the energy saving performance. Here is the situation of houses. Since the start of program, gradually we saw improvement of the insulation performance, but at the same time, still a certain percentage of housing is below the nationally set standard of insulation. Next slide shows the cap and trade system introduced targeting existing large-sized buildings with support from stakeholders. 27% reduction has been achieved in emission and CO2 emission per square meter as office building. More than 30% has been reduced. At some buildings, more than 50% of emission has been reduced. So majority of buildings covered by this program have reduced CO2 emission with their own initiatives, for example, highly efficient lighting fixture and so on. Some buildings owners have collaborated with tenants to reduce use of energy. Next slide explains the program targeting existing small to medium-sized operators. So low carbon benchmark is set. For example, at office, the tenants area, looking at the situation of tenants area in office building from 2012 to 2018, you see the shift to lower carbon structure. So whether it is the restaurants or bars and other types of buildings, we have this criteria applied. The next 2050, zero carbon. This year, we updated the 2030 goal as of reducing an emission by 50% from 2000. But the next 10 years till 2030 is pretty critical. That is why Tokyo has updated the goal for 2030. Toward the carbon half in 2030, our thinking is that the day-to-day lives in Tokyo actually is leading to emission in areas outside of Tokyo as well. So in addition to fossil fuel consumption reduction, we are working on the use of renewable resources. So these are the 4 aspects we are working on. Next, toward 2030, we are working on initiatives. For example, when buildings are built newly, zero emission buildings and zero emission specifications are targeted. So the new buildings will be built with our view set on 2050. So we will be utilizing available technologies so that buildings after completion will utilize minimum amount of energy. So such energy zero emission specifications are needed. And also about 2.7 million buildings of existing buildings, they have to be transitioned to zero emission. So to do this toward 2030, existing buildings have to be migrated to zero emission. The measures we are implementing are listed on the right. Further, energy saving and renewable energy and low carbon material used, such as wood, and also digital technology to be used to enable enhanced sophisticated energy management. So these countermeasures have to be implemented thoroughly in order to ensure the implementation of such measures. At the Tokyo Metropolitan Government's Congress, we proposed the start of a full-fledged discussion on the thorough implementation of those measures. So based upon the global context, many companies in Tokyo too are being more conscious of decarbonization need. For Tokyo to continue to be attractive in attracting firms and people, we have to create the foundation for decarbonization. Zero emission for buildings is indispensable. For Tokyo to be resilient and livable city, it's indispensable initiatives. So moving forward between Japan and EU, we'd like to continuously exchange information in a timely manner. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ms. Shiba. Very interesting again. And if you have questions about the Tokyo plans for zero emissions, please do put them in through the question and answer box. You can turn off your camera now, Ms. Shiba, and we will get you a little bit later. Now, our final speaker for this session is Joyka Lupla, the Coordinator Expert Environment and Climate Service with Ghent in Belgium. And Ghent has 250,000 inhabitants. It's a port city in northwest Belgium. And several years ago, the city decided to fight energy poverty while at the same time enabling CO2 emissions reductions from housing. And today, Ghent offers a one-stop desk for energy efficient renovation, the Energie Centrale. This service facilitates access to information and financial support to cut energy needs and carbon emissions in existing homes. Now, to find out more, it's my pleasure to welcome Joyka Lupla onto our virtual stage. Joyka, I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good morning from Belgium. The Energie Centrale is actually the Dutch name for power plant. So it's our brand for energy efficient living one-stop shop, as you can see. Next slide, please. So I will talk about energy efficiency in Ghent, one slide, then what is a one-stop shop, and I will try to reserve some time for the focus on low-income families and energy poverty. Next slide, please. This is the situation in Ghent of the housing and the energy efficiency of the houses. The baseline is there's a lot of work. So on the basic insulation norms, but also on solar panels, heat pumps, renewable energy. Next slide, please. So for solving that problem, we developed actually a chain of services that is called the Energy Centrale One-Stop Shop, which includes support, advice, down to grants and loans and other financial solutions in one shop, and with a special attention for energy poverty. Next slide, please. So our approach is actually down to 3 stages, which is enthuse people, that is mostly communication and online tools where you can see what the state of your house is and what you can do. Then make it effortless and make it affordable. Next slide, please. For making it effortless, we actually base our approach on the social psychological way of people, the way people make decisions. If people have stress making decisions, we know they use or they make short-term decisions. So we actually want to take the stress out of the decision making and try to put the long-term vision back into the way they look at their homes and the renovation of their homes. We do that by going very personal. So we come to the people's home, we watch the situation, we make an analysis, and we try to advise what's to be done. Next slide, please. And after the advice is made, this is what the advice looks like. We try to limit choice stress. For instance, this is one way of limiting the choice stress and trying to turn the decision into a long-term one. We always give no more than 3 next steps for the house, because if we do give them a long list of choices, people get the stress of renovation again. Next slide, please. So what's also important is that there is one expert that supports you. You can ask for accompaniment. We look for contractors, we compare tenders, we support you. And next slide, we also give you support on the financial part, because we have financial solutions like energy loans, like grants, or we support you in the application for grants of other governments in Belgium. So this is an overview of what kind of answers we provide for the worries that the people have. It's quite an unburdening of what you see there, the juggling of life and work and renovation in people's lives. Next slide, please. We have energy loans on 0 and 1%. We've established a recurring fund for that. And we have extra supports, for instance, the 0% loan or other solutions like grants, extra grants for low-income families. Next slide, please. You see here low-income families. For us, it's captive renters, captive home owners and landlords renting out to low-income families, because these landlords are, of course, an interesting intermediate for reaching out to the low-income families and the captive renters. Next slide, please. Captive renters energy scan is actually a very low threshold way of reaching out to people who have problems paying for their electricity bill. We go there, we focus on behavior, but we have also grants for energy efficient appliances, and we try to give them the best provider. And in these times of energy crisis in Belgium, because we now have a huge amount of energy bills raising because of this gas price, it's really welcome for most households. Next slide, please. Social housing is also a part of our of what we do, but there we take mostly the building. We pay as a service of climate for energy studies for social housing, because mostly in the renovation of social housing, the energy study is something that's being forgotten, or there is no money left to do it. So we pay for it to get the renovation to a higher energy efficiency level. Next slide, please. Private rental market, on the other hand, is a very difficult one because of the split incentive. People that rent out houses don't have a lot of incentives to pay for large renovations on energy efficiency. So we did a behavior study, we have free advice, and we've raised also the renovation grants for landlords, because they are, as I said, an interesting intermediary, especially for people with a lower income. Next slide. Apartment buildings are also an important part of what we do. There you have in Belgium the legislation on associations of co-owners who have to be to vote for as a majority for renovation on energy efficiency. So this is a time-consuming process, but we try to accompany them through the process. Next slide, please. Captive home owners, therefore we have a specific solution because the problem is they have a house, but they don't have any means to renovate it. Next slide. This is what we call the Icarus project. It's funded by the European Union. We actually put a starting capital of 30,000 euros in each house that we help to renovate. We accompany them and we get the money back into a recurring fund if they sell the house. It's a part of the mortgage taken by the local government. Next slide, please. This is another financial instrument I wanted to show you. These are the soft loans. So we try to invest with a loan up to 35,000 euros for people who want to invest in energy efficient measures, insulation, as well as renewable energy into their homes. This is also a recurring fund. We did start with grants, but now we have more people using the loans because the amount you can loan is higher, and people invest on several measures if they take the energy loan. Next slide, please. This is also a slide on what we do with captive owners, energy expertise, personal counseling. It's part of the project of Icarus 2. Next slide. And this is a slide on a few numbers. We did in 5 years time, we did 5,500 home visits, 2,000 guided renovation. And on a 5-year base, we did 850 loans. But as we see it now, we've raised the amount you can loan. And so these are also increasing also for renewable measures like mostly solar panels. So we actually think the one-stop shop is something that works to convince people to invest into energy efficient measures into their home. And with the 19th century houses, a lot of 19th century houses in Ghent, you have to put the effort into it to reach the carbon neutrality in 2050. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joyke. Stay with us. So you can just keep your camera on Joyka, if you can come back in. And then can I ask the rest of our panelists to also join me for our question and answer session? Great, I see you all there, excellent. The joys of online conferencing all over the world, it's amazing really. Okay, so let's have the results of our poll question. That was an interesting one. So Stefan, can you bring up the results of the poll? Okay. So the question you were asked is, what do you think makes a more climate-friendly house or apartment? Is it better insulation, smart appliances, use of renewable materials to build the house? Oh, interesting. Okay, use of renewable energy to power the house. So the use of renewable energy to power the house just scraped past at 72%, better insulation at 68%. So maybe to get a quick reaction on the poll results, I'll go to you first, Mr. Maki Hari. You were talking about Totori. What do you think about the findings of that poll result?
Yes,
regarding renewable energy, I think we have to enhance both. So I think this result does make sense to me. Well, renewable energy is higher than the others. That may be a bit surprise to me, but I think this does make sense. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And we have plenty of questions for all of you. I'll start off with you again, Mr. Maki Hari. Somebody has a question for Totori. How does the prefecture manage to subsidize the insulation of houses budget-wise? And an additional question, and in order to get the subsidies, is there any obligation to use a specific insulation material or a specific type of window? Maybe you could answer those questions for me, please.
Okay. So regarding the condition for subsidy, there are no conditions. As long as it doesn't have to be a specific insulation, as long as the criteria is met, that's okay. But it has to be wood material, local wood materials produced in Tottori Prefecture. That's actually a condition. We would offer subsidy if materials are produced in local extra subsidy is provided. That's not a condition, but it's a premium extra subsidy can be provided if it's locally produced.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. We'll be going back to you as well, but I want to move on to Frederick Knez. A lot of questions as well about Slovenia. Maybe one that struck me that I'd like to put to you first. I mean, amazing constructions, but your project number one, that stunning house you showed us, Frederick, with its multiple use, multiple sources of energy. I mean, amazing. But what is the cost of producing something like that?
Yeah, this is the project house, let's say the demo house. So the cost is naturally very high at this case, but most of the solutions that are involved in the building should be maybe 10 to 15% more expensive than classic house. If you look for example, building with wood, it should, so the building with wooden structure should be maybe 10% more expensive than with masonry. As for the photovoltaics, it pays for itself. So it's more. It is currently, at least in Slovenia, let's say has the same competitiveness than grid. The bidirectional district heating is only demonstrated here. Does not make sense in this house. Mobility as well. We also know that mobility, if charged by your own sources, can be cheaper than grid. So in total, if I would say that, except for this building, which is now, as I said, demonstration, maybe 10-15% more expensive housing as normal is expected for most of these solutions. Maybe not all, but for most.
And what about the retrofitting of the old buildings?
Retrofitting is very interesting. I can say that this retrofitting was motivated mainly with the statics, so with the earthquake retrofit. This was the primary motivation. And when it was analyzed for that building. It was assessed to be €500,000, which was a lot. And the owners of the building said, okay, this is too much, but we have to do something. And they were looking for additional solution, and they come up with the idea that it is possible the foundation actually bears for additional floor. And the size of the building, well, to make a long story short, more than 3/4 of the cost will be reduced because of selling additional story.
Okay, we got a question in specifically for you. Is there any involvement of cities or other public authorities in the projects of your cluster?
Yes, in general. So I said this, the second project in general is involvement of the National Housing Fund. Then the first project is co-financed by the state ministry. Slovenia is a small state, so it's actually more or less everything on state level. As for the last one, there is no, let's say, very direct involvement, but for sure it is, I mean, the direct involvement in incentive-wise. But there were no obstacles in applying this solution, because in general, you should still get permit, you should still get technical checks, of course, for such an intervention. But these solutions are actually supported in cities and in Slovenia, not hindered.
Okay, thank you very much, Frederic. A question for you, Ms. Shiba. Actually, there are several questions on Tokyo and your goals to reach zero emissions. One question I'll put to you from one of our viewers online. Low carbon buildings for a mega city are surely an obstacle. If concrete cannot be used in the conventional way and wood prices are already very high, what other alternatives do you see being used? Perhaps you can take that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. It is a good question. Indeed, right now the price of wood is high, but as of 2030, as we look into the future, what do we aim to achieve? So as the metropolitan government, we have to present the future vision first. In that sense, now, the various ordinance of Tokyo Metropolitan Government is being followed by developers and contractors and so on. And they are quite aggressive in their activities, such as coming up with a new construction methods, utilizing a new material. So when we think about the current status, we may get the impression that it's difficult to renew the city, but we should start with the vision of what that we want to achieve together with the firms and the private sector. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And another question for you. Aside from the cap and trade system for CO2 emissions, are there any other economic incentives that you are providing to decarbonize the building sector in Tokyo?
Thank you very much for the question. Just like Tottori Prefecture, various grants or subsidies are being provided. For example, for detached buildings, a certain level or more of insulation or window with insulation performance. If the criteria set by Tokyo is met, then the grant is provided. And then also there is also subsidy for the photovoltaic generation. The existing buildings are the recipients of the grant at this point. And next year, the grant program will be started for new buildings as well next year.
Okay, thank you for that. Joyka from Ghent, we have a lot of questions coming in for you. I'm going to read out one from Atsuhito Oshima. Thank you for your question. Now, Atsuhito says, I really enjoyed your presentation, very comprehensive approach. My question is, how do you sustain this very comprehensive outreach? Are you recruiting new employees on this program in the city government, or do you collaborate with local businesses or experts? Any challenges in terms of implementation?
To the first part, both. We have our own experts and we collaborate with NGOs that do the same thing on energy advice for people in homes. So we do a lot of projects together. And what was the second part of the question?
And the second part of the question is, how do you recruit new employees on this program in the city government, or do you collaborate with local businesses or experts?
Yes, it's been a challenge lately to recruit people. So we are working on combinations of recruiting and programs to train people. But we have an advisor of sort of kind of pool of, I think, 20 people being able to do the advising at home. Some are freelance architects, some are people working full-time for us.
Okay, so there's another one actually. I'll start off with you again, Joyka. Your initiatives are very much aimed at citizens supporting their investments into energy saving measures. Did you feel any impact of COVID-19 in the demand from citizens for such support? More demand because people stayed at home or needed more financial support because of reduced income? Maybe Joyka, if you could first ask that, and then I'll go back to you, Mr. Maki-Hari, for your answers to that as well.
Yes, quite surprisingly, the number of people renovating did not drop, but we had to reduce our own service to online advice, and that was not very popular because it's actually, I thought it proved that people really benefit from someone coming to your house, looking at the situation, helping you with advice on the spot. And the online advice did not work so good, but the renovation rate did not drop. So people kept on asking for loans, asking for grants, and doing it by themselves. So that's a bit the conclusion of the COVID crisis for us.
Okay, okay. Mr. Maki-Hari, would you like to comment on that? Or do you want me to read out the question again? So I'll do that again. Yeah, okay. Did you feel any, well, actually what I might do is there were some more questions for you as well. Here's one for you, Mr. Maki-Hari. Does the green building program in Tottori, it also applies to Tokyo, include any obligation to use a specific insulation material or a specific kind of window? I think I might have asked that already, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the materials that are going to be used.
Regarding insulation material, there is no obligation, no specific material, because we set a high standard in Tottori. So most likely people use highly insulated materials. So instead of choosing conventional materials, people are inclined to use high performance insulation materials.
Okay, thank you. And Frederic, there was a question for you. What do you think of the assembling strategy for housing? So I suppose, if I'm correct, these would be, you know, kit houses that you can come in. Of course, with wooden structures, you can do a lot more of that. Is that possible and make them, you know, very eco-friendly with zero carbon emissions?
Oh yes, of course, of course. The first house that I have shown is actually a prefabricated house. So it's perfectly possible. Slovenian wooden housing is actually almost entirely based on prefabricated houses, mainly built in Europe, but there's no reason for let's say, building it also elsewhere. But yes, it is possible, even including the transport, the global warming potential would still remain negative because the wood has a lot of embodied negative CO2.
Okay, little dropout on your line there. Maybe final question to you, Ms. Shiba from Tokyo. One of the interesting things you said in your presentation, you talked about existing buildings have to be migrated to zero emissions. That must be incredibly challenging. You know, in many parts of Europe, we have very old buildings, ancient buildings. So is it actually possible to really make these old buildings, and you have them too in Tokyo, to be completely energy efficient?
Thank you so much for the question. Well, to perfectly improve the energy efficiency in a significant manner, it's a challenging thing to achieve. But we started the cap and trade program where we reduced the total amount of emission. And as we created the program, we talked with developers, and developers gave us inquiries as to what they should do with old buildings, because they were at a loss as to what they can do for old buildings. And what we did in terms of communication was that the innovation or refurbishment of building equipments could be done in a planned manner. For office building, for example, the owner can work with tenants, and the operation related energy could be reduced. So Tokyo metropolitan government suggested several ideas, and we engaged them in the discussion. And to support the building owners in cap and trade scheme, tenants are also obliged to implement some energy saving initiatives. So that's part of the guideline. So this is not just an obligation on the building owners, but tenants as well. Of course, we cannot completely achieve energy efficiency. But when we think about the future, together with improving the energy efficiency, if we can combine that with renewable energy, I believe we can get closer and closer to the goal. Thank you.
Just very, very quickly, any plan to use the buildings from the Tokyo Olympics, such as the Olympic Village, in a sustainable way?
Sustainable way. Well, the Olympic Village used for Olympic Games, after the game was finished, the plan is for the buildings to be sold out as condominiums to the private sector. So that's the plan. So, but the building will not be just discarded or scrapped. We already have a plan in place after the event. Did that answer the question?
That's good to hear, and it certainly did. A big thanks to all of you. We've run out of time, but fascinating to hear your views and your presentations. Thank you too for all the questions we got in. We got more than we could actually get answers to, but I want to thank all of our panelists for participating. You can turn off your cameras now and your microphones, but thank you so much. And we'll move on now to our second discovery session of the conference. Its theme is initiatives for low carbon tourism. Hugely important topic. So both Europe and Japan, of course, are privileged destinations. And my goodness, we know so much more about Japan from following the Olympics. So it was great to find out more. But both destinations, of course, for global and tourism, local tourism. And as the world hopefully will recover from the pandemic, how then will local actors make sure that tourists can enjoy their stay and visits to these places with the lowest possible levels of CO2 emissions? How can Japan and Europe work together towards low carbon tourism? So there are some of the issues we're going to explore during this discovery session. We have two speakers who will speak for about 8 minutes. We'll have a quick Q&A session of about 10 minutes following their presentations. And as usual, we're going to start with a poll. So if we can have the poll, Stefan, here it is. In Japan, after transport, 56% of emissions. What do you think contributes the most to CO2 emissions of tourism? Is it food and beverages? Is it activities? Is it accommodation? Or is it souvenirs? In this case, please only select one option. So is it food and beverages, activities, accommodation, or souvenirs? And we'll get to the answer after we've heard from our two presenters. So our first speaker now is Juan Luis Pozo Calderon, Chief Sustainability Officer with Global Omnium, a Visit Valencia Foundation in Valencia, Spain. And the port city of Valencia lies on Spain's southeastern coast. It's the third largest city in the country. It is a privileged destination for tourists. In 2021, as part of its sustainable recovery plan after the pandemic, Valencia became the first city worldwide to start verifying the carbon emission of local tourism with the support of a public-private partnership. And Valencia's vision is to become a leading example of a carbon neutral tourism destination. So let's find out more about that now. Over to you, Juan.
Thank you very much, Karen. Good evening to Japanese people and good morning to European people. And thank you to invite us to make this presentation about the city of Valencia in Spain. I don't see the presentation. Okay, so okay, thank you. And I want to announce that only a few hours ago, the European Union has chosen Valencia as the 2022 European Capital of Smart Touring in the third edition of this competition. I would like to start with a video of the success case of Valencia. Please put the video. Can put it, okay.
Valencia is committed to fulfilling the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development Goals. Climate change is the main challenge facing our society. For this reason, Valencia has decided to take action to combat its impact and give the tourist destination a carbon neutral and water neutral footprint. And we are already taking the first steps. Valencia was the first city to calculate and certify the carbon footprint for its tourist activity. Utilizing an innovative digital system, it is possible to precisely determine emissions as a whole in each component, essential information to define and implement reduction and offsetting actions. Moving forward with the roadmap, Valencia is committed to more sustainably managing an essential resource, water. A capital that is already the most efficient European city, thanks to investment in infrastructure and digitalization. Taking another step, it is now the first global destination to calculate and verify its water footprint. Applying innovative technology enables us to determine the impact of tourism on all uses. We know what the consumption is for each of the sections comprising it. And this gives us a foundation to collectively reduce it. Because a tourist destination that manages its environmental impact fosters a good quality of city life, a more sustainable local economy, and the preservation of natural ecosystems. It drives cost savings for businesses by both redesigning processes and reducing consumption of resources. And it enables residents and visitors to enjoy safer, healthier, more sustainable surroundings. A project promoted by Valencia City Council and developed by Visit Valencia and Aguas de Valencia Global Omnium Foundations.
And returning to the presentation, I want to make a question for us. Next slide, please. What kind of footprint do we want to leave behind? Climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss jeopardize most tourist activities. And a just transition to net zero before 2050 will only be possible if tourism recovery accelerates the adaptation of sustainable consumption and production, and will redefine our future success to consider not only economic value, but rather the regeneration of ecosystem, biodiversity, and even our cities. In this picture, you can see our jewel of oceanography of Valencia, the biggest aquarium in Europe. Next slide, please. In the 19th century, Lord Kelvin said, "Will not be nature, cannot manage, cannot control, and always get work done, and obviously cannot reduce or eliminate." You can see in this picture our jewel of the Albufera, a natural park of the biggest lagoon in Spain. Next slide, please. We have developed a success case with 3 assets. Are really we on track? We need a leadership example to get that we are on track to meet the global targets of limiting global warming to 1 degrees Celsius. You can see in this picture our city of art and science, a jewel of the modern architecture. Next slide, please. The elements are real-time measurement, long-term commitment, and social innovation project. Humans like to think that we are in control of everything, but we have been reminded today that the laws of nature are the true bottom line. Next slide, please. Through the private-public collaboration with the water company of the city, Global Onion, we have developed an artificial intelligence tool for real-time measurement and the official certification of the carbon footprint activity under blockchain technology. And you can see another beauty picture of Albufera and a traditional bowl. Next slide, please. Technology is the key. We have a powerful calculation engine that atomize and divide the data of all emission sources in a 6 level 3 plus blockchain technology to establish the digital identity of the primary data. Next slide, please. Put the video, please. In the data atomization allows to manage the reductions and compensation process at each emission source. We have designed a 6 level 3 structured atomization data as a carbon footprint. We need in the 6th level, the bottom level, that all tourist actors can sell their basic products and services with the certification of carbon neutral. Next slide, please. Another click, please. It is impossible to reduce and offsetting the carbon footprint in the total amount of the first level, in the top level that is equal to the total carbon footprint of the tourist activity in the city. Next slide, please. However, it is possible if any basic product or service is officially sold like carbon neutral in the 6th level and its totalization in 5th level go down to 0, and that is the same toward a step in the 4th, in the 3rd, and in the 2nd level. Our goal and pathway is getting that all products and services of all actors in the city are sold carbon neutral, identified and certified with the technology of blockchain. And in this picture, you can see flamingos in the small Albufera in the oceanography. Next slide, please. We need to put the citizens in the center of the project. In the other hand, the project will be a green mistake. And by the way, in this picture, you can see the historical center of Valencia with our cathedral, sample of our large history. Next slide, please. History has shown us that in moments of crisis, society can truly transform, for example, in times of war, in times of economic collapse, and in times of the sea. Today, we live in time of COVID-19, and we have seen government and institutions across all sectors working quickly, working together. For that reason, we want that our citizens can generate CO2 credits during their daily activities, and they can pay them products and services of the local economic actors that need those credits to give themselves carbon neutral. Next slide, please. Please make your action reflect your work. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Very interesting. We will come back to you, Juan Luis, after we've heard from our next speaker. And indeed, if you do have questions about Valencia and the greening of tourism there, please do fire them in through the Q&A box on your Zoom screen. Now, our second speaker for this discovery session is Kenya Katayama, the mayor of Niseko town in the Hokkaido prefecture in Japan. And Niseko is located on Japan's Northern Ireland prefecture of Hokkaido. It's challenging to get all these Japanese names right this morning. But anyway, it is a celebrated ski resort in the Asian region, renowned for the quality of its snow. And conscious of the impact of tourism on the environment and climate, Niseko town made ecotourism a central theme of its eco-model city plan adopted in 2013. The municipality promotes initiatives such as renewable energy in touristic facilities and the reduction of travel distance between points of interest as well. Very interesting. So looking forward now to hearing from you, Mayor Katayama. The floor is yours.
皆さん、こんにちは。
Hello everyone. This is Katayama, Mayor of Niseko. Our town, could you go to the next slide? Our town is located in the northernmost island called Hokkaido. This is the same, so in 2 hours away from Sapporo City. Sapporo City is where Olympic game was held before. The population is small, however, the area is 197 square kilometers and 70% of that land mass is forests. So forests will be important factor to absorb CO2. Toward zero carbon, various initiatives are underway. One of them is building-related emission that represent 70% of emissions of Niseko town. So high-performing insulation and underground thermal pump and hot springs waste oil to be used for heating, and also energy derived from snow is being used to cool buildings. Next slide shows our initiatives related to transportation. So use of bicycles, including electric bicycle, that's what we are working on. And also, as you see, in order to proceed with eco-friendly activities, when we receive tourists, we are going to take tax and use the proceed on activities to improve the quality of their stay. And for buildings and transportation, in many formats, we are implementing various measures to reduce emission. On the left, you see a picture where you see a house covered in snow. This house is using underground thermal pump, and in winter time, they are conducting experiment of growing vegetables in winter time without using fertilizer. They grow vegetables, and these vegetables are used for the school meals for local elementary schools. And in the middle, you see the facility that uses snow-derived power for cooling. And this facility is used as a storage facility for storing rice. And the picture on the right shows the facility that uses snow to cool the potatoes and delay the timing of germination. That's used to adjust the shipment timing. So through these various initiatives toward 2050, we are looking to reduce CO2 emission by 86%, and that CO2 remaining will be absorbed by the forests of Niseko town. By doing so, we are looking to achieve zero carbon society. Now, the town hall office, our facility is quite airtight in terms of UA value. So various initiatives are incorporated as we formulate policy. And as we do so, local energy companies and companies that grow forests, those are private sector companies, and our initiative is to help grow such private sector companies outside of the municipality or public sector. So this shows local circulation and economic circulation and circulation between economy, society, and energy. The intention here is to create a community that minimizes CO2 emission. On bottom right, you find the message, but at this point, based upon SDGs, about 450 people inhabited. We are looking to create a special zone for those people, and by referring to the Freiburg area of Germany, and we have sent our staff members to Germany, and also we've invited a specialist, Mr. Murakami, and we are learning from the German cities, and we are working on the initiative of creating a special zone that dedicates itself to zero carbon initiative. Niseko is blessed with a beautiful nature such as rivers and various activities, including horse riding, are being enjoyed, and the quality of snow is powdery, and it's enjoyed by many visitors. And in wintertime, a total of 700,000 rooms are booked in total. So I do hope that you enjoy the high quality powdered snow. So this is a Niseko village, which you can enjoy. And this is commercial facilities disseminating various cultures of Niseko. So Niseko is a quite scenic place. Niseko is blessed with a scenic landscape. So I do hope we can learn from you in how we can achieve zero carbon. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Mr. Katayama. Niseko just looks absolutely beautiful. I hope I can visit it someday. So can you please stay with us, Mr. Katayama, because we have a couple of questions. So if you can turn your camera back on for us, please, and you can unmute your microphone. Well, no, actually, you can keep your microphone muted until I call out to you. And Juan Luis, we also are joined by you. And let's get the results of the poll. Stefan, can you bring up the poll? It's very interesting, the answers to our poll question, because the question was, in Japan, after transport, which is 56% of emissions, what contributes the most to CO2 emissions of tourism? Is it food and beverages, activities, accommodation, or souvenirs? So none of you, or very few, only 2% of you got the right answer, because in fact, the answer is souvenirs. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But food and beverages got the highest result at 46%, and accommodation at 38%, activities at 14%, but it is souvenirs is the right answer, because they account for 23% of CO2 emissions of tourism in Japan. And that's according to a 2020 study from the Graduate School of Environmental and Information Studies of Tokyo City University. Accommodation only accounts for 9.8%, and food and beverage only accounts for 7.5%, and activities 3%. But souvenirs a whopping 23%. Maybe that might make us all think about buying souvenirs. Anyway, we have got some questions in, and we have about, we've got a few minutes for questions. So maybe first, Juan Luis, there are a couple of questions for you. Can your approach be extrapolated to any other place? And I'll ask you another question as well. How does blockchain technology contribute to the calculation of carbon footprints? Perhaps you can answer those questions for us, please.
It is a good question. All human activities generate the same carbon emission type around the world. For this reason, technology is ready to be extrapolated to any other city on the world in any time. We need only a few months to get the goal of the calculation and the official certification in the city of Valencia. The life cycle of the tooling activity is more or less the same in any city. Primary data are normally found in all types of official record, and on the other hand, the problem with the factory emission is our know-how with our technology. For this, I think within 1 year, in any city around the world, we can develop this project.
And what about tourism coming to your area now? I mean, obviously, you know, as we hope we will get out of, emerge from the cloud of the COVID pandemic, more people are desperate to travel, not least people in my own country, which is a terrible climate. We want to go to your country in Portugal for the sunshine and everything else. How are you going to manage the desperation now of tourists to visit beautiful places like Valencia, while also making sure you can contain the CO2 emissions and make the whole tourism experience more eco-friendly?
I think that it's easy because humans need to travel. We are nomads. We need to know, we need to see, we need to explore. And with this project, only want that all actors in the city, they are convinced that tourism is an economy in general that needs to evolve urgently. And for this reason, this project is considered strategic and crucial for its competitiveness and the image and the reputation of the tourist destination of the city of Valencia. All actors are involved in the project. It's necessary. It's crucial for us. For that reason, the offer is better than previous year.
Okay, well, maybe I can put the same question to you, Mr. Katayama. Beautiful, beautiful Niseke, absolutely gorgeous place to visit. But how do you make sure that those who do visit are keeping their CO2 emissions reduced, and those who provide tourism facilities to them will reduce CO2 emissions during these times when you're likely to have more tourists visit the area? I think you need to unmute your microphone, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Sorry for that. So, at Niseko, if anything, visiting tourists, they love nature, actually. Increasing number of visitors love nature, and they enjoy tourism, enjoying nature. So those visitors like to walk on footpath, and they like the cycling as activities they want to enjoy. So as a town, so electric vehicle and various equipments are being delivered to public municipally run facilities to reduce CO2 emission from public facilities, and also for visitors who stay at hotels. So tools and equipment that they use, we are trying to have them use eco-friendly products or tools as they stay here in Niseko, and we are engaging in various discussions on promoting that activity, and we are encouraging visitors to be mindful of impact on nature through our enlightenment program. Thank you.
And we have another question from you from Satoru Mitsuguchi. Thank you very much for your question, Satoru. He wants to know, my question is to the gentleman from Niseko. What did you learn from Germany? Is it about public participation?
So now, in Japan, for lack of better words, what I say may not be appropriate, but when we try to achieve zero carbon, the town of 10,000 people, we actually maybe a rare example where we try to learn from Germany's advanced cases. Mr. Murakami Atsushi, who lives in Germany, is an expert, and under his instruction, twice a year, our staff members fly to work in Germany, and we do study on the energy initiatives in Germany, and we take the learning back to Niseko, and so that we can start where we can start, even if we are small in size. So various municipalities are engaging in this kind of activities. About 7 municipalities are engaging in similar activities. As Niseko, hope that answered your question.
It certainly does, and we will leave it there for this session. But thank you so much to Juan Luis Pozo Calderon and to you, Mayor Kenya Katayama. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your presentations about your beautiful areas, which I'm sure we all hope to visit over the coming years. You can both turn off your cameras now and mute your microphones, because now, my goodness, after a hectic 2 days, it's time now for the conclusion of this conference. And we're going to hear now about 2 cities that have been recognized for their commitment to decarbonization. They illustrate how they could become local leaders for climate action, paving a way towards carbon neutrality and acting as a role model for other cities and regions. We will hear from 2 speakers. They'll speak for about 7 minutes each. We won't be having a Q&A or slides or polls, not so much slides, but no polls or Q&As for this session. So now let's first hear about Kyoto in Japan, and to tell us more, we will be joined by Daisaku Kadokawa, the mayor of Kyoto. And Kyoto, of course, is Japan's former capital. It's a city of history and legacy. It's home to 17 World Heritage Sites. It's also the birthplace of the Kyoto Protocol, a milestone in the global fight against climate change and a decade before the Paris Agreement. Kyoto now is preparing its future towards carbon neutrality. It's a member of the ICLEI and Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and it is one of the pioneer cities leading the local decarbonization movement in Japan. So, Mayor Kadokawa, you are very welcome. I'm going to hand over to you now.
はい、フロア中に対し、ポエット専務理事、また
Her Excellency Ambassador Floor, Dr. Poet General Manager, and all the organizers of the event, I'd like to extend my deep appreciation. I am honored to have the opportunity to speak to close this important event to share initiatives toward decarbonized society in Japan and Europe. I am very impressed to listen to all the speakers today. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about Kyoto. Kyoto's origin goes back to year 794. In the hope of public peace, Heian-kyo was established. And Kyoto, as an open city, has nurtured and preserved and developed its city functions and culture. I believe Kyoto is unique. We have been always open over the more than 1,000 years, Kyoto is, I think, one and only city that has more than 1,000 years history with that respect. And Kyoto is a big city, but in fact, 75% of the city is covered with green. Because we have preserved our trees and woods, we have access to quality well water. You can enjoy good sake, good cuisine in Kyoto. We have coexisted with nature throughout our long history. The concept of mottainai, meaning don't waste, and the value of recycling have been deeply rooted in people's lives and culture. 24 years ago, in Kyoto, back in, I believe it was morning, November 11th, the first important global milestone to address global warming, Kyoto Protocol, was signed here in Kyoto, which was held by the international audience. One of the audience, international audiences said that Kyoto respects both history and nature. And this important milestone was achieved in Kyoto. So this achievement was highly appreciated by the audience. And then to Paris agreement was closed. So we'd like to leverage and capitalize our learnings moving forward. And 2 years ago, Kyoto hosted IPCC General Assembly, and IPCC Kyoto guideline was adopted that stipulates the greenhouse gas calculation to stand by Paris Agreement. IPCC General Assembly demonstrated a sense of crisis against climate change and also a passion among global participants to solve the challenge. This is the must mission. In order to be responsible for the future, we need to work together. And as you know, Dr. Manabe, who developed climate model for IPCC, focusing won the Nobel Physical Prize. I'm very happy to hear that news. And the risk of climate change that Dr. Manabe and other scientists warn is becoming reality. So global warming is an impending global issue that we all have to address immediately. Kyoto Protocol gave a huge impact on people and businesses in Kyoto. With the pride and mission of birthplace of the protocol, Kyoto issued the nation's first ordinance to control greenhouse gas emission in 2004. We have involved local people to engage in various initiatives. And through these initiatives, Kyoto successfully halved garbage volume from peak and cut energy consumption by 30%. We've placed public transportation in the center of the city development. As a result, Kyoto saw declines in road traffic by 20% and energy consumption by 30%. We have to maintain this level. And in the past, 46% of visitors used personal cars to come to Kyoto. Now it's only 9%. We were able to cut the number of people who visit Kyoto by private cars dropped by 80%. This indicates that our initiative has been working really well and changed mindset of citizens and tourists. Given the seriousness of climate change, we need to further enhance and strengthen the initiatives and take on a challenge to achieve 2050 net zero emission. So Kyoto took the lead and declared a 2050 net zero emission target 2 years ago. Municipalities across the nation followed the suit, and 2050 net zero emission target was adopted as national policy in October last year. Based on the discussion we had with the citizen and baseline about 2050 goal, we revised the ordinance against global warming in December last year and hammered out a 10-year plan to target global warming. The plan calls for decarbonization in 4 areas: business, energy, mobility, and lifestyle. For example, in the area of energy, we have expanded the scope of buildings that are subject to mandatory installation of the renewable energy system. And Kyoto also improved the framework to facilitate conversion to renewable energy for communities. So we are trying to make improvement. Kyoto has enhanced its initiative to expand renewable energy from both demand and supply side. So again, I'd like to reiterate that international cooperation among cities is critical to achieve net zero by 2050. Cities play a crucial role to realize decarbonization. In my capacity as the chair of ICLEI East Asia Regional Executive Committee, I have been working hard to enhance the international collaboration. And given the request from the UK government, Kyoto became the first city to join Powering Past Coal Alliance PPCA. So we are trying to learn from each other and make progress together. And Kyoto has been taking part in IURC project led by EU since September, and we will be working with a sister city, Prague, Czech Republic, and other European cities to share challenges and solutions. So we have to be humble and squarely face the challenge. We'd like to work together, and we will learn from international cities to make progress. I'm determined to make that happen. Thank you so much for your attention.
And thank you very much, Mayor Kadokawa. That was very interesting. Thank you for taking the time out to tell us about your beautiful city. Thank you very much. Now we will hear about Lahti City in Finland, the European Green Capital for 2021. To tell us more about Lahti, I'd like to welcome now Mila Bruno, the Executive Director of Lahti City. And it's a growing city of 120,000 inhabitants. It combines a rich natural environment and the originality of a small city with bold climate action, energy solutions, and green businesses. And Lahti is also internationally known as a winter sports city and a cultural hotspot. Historically, Lahti has always been an important trade route and marketplace between Finland's capital city, Helsinki, and Russia's St. Petersburg. So we are going to hear now from Mila a little bit more about Lahti City. Mila, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the very inspiring words from the Mayor Kadokawa, and also honorable guests. It's very big pleasure to be here today with you. I'm going to start with the short video of the European Green Capital, the smallest and the most northern European Green Capital so far. So let's look at the video first, and then I'll show you some slides. So, dear participants, Lahti is the European Green Capital this year, 2021. And as said in the presentation introduction, we are a city of 120,000 inhabitants and the urban region population is 200,000. We have a very logistic situation here in Finland. We're only an hour away from the capital of Helsinki. We're a very modern industrial city. We have a tradition as an industrial city, but we are changing our story with these green initiatives that we have started in the city. We're also the youngest university city in Finland, which gives us a lot of opportunities for collaboration in the future. So we are a very typical European mid-sized city. Most of Europeans live in cities exactly like Lahti, with the inhabitants of 100,000 to 300,000 people. So far, we are the smallest and most northern European green capital, and we are very proud to be this, and this is something that we also want to share with everybody. How Lahti became the European Green Capital is also very easy to explain with the video that you can get this link after the presentation. So if you feel free to go and look at it on our YouTube channel. There is a 4-minute video telling you how we actually got to this point. But there are several environmental accomplishments in the Lahti region that took us this far. And of course, I need to remind everybody that our work is never done. As cities, that we have a vital role of making these very forerunning solutions in our cities to make sure that we reach our goals, like Mayor Kado Gavas said in his presentation as well, that cities have a very big role. And I'm very happy that he also mentioned the collaboration is, for instance, with Japan and European cities that we're doing today and hopefully also in the future. Just to give you a few ideas and few presentations of what we have accomplished in Lahti. Today in 2021, when we are the European Green Capital, we have cut our CO2 emissions by 70% compared to the 1990s. Today, we utilize 99% of our waste. Half of it goes to energy and half of it gets recycled. Our goal is to be waste-free in 2050. The biggest achievement that we have done is that all of our district heating production is now produced emission-free, which means that all of the heat generated in the area and also the energy transformation we've done is now emission-free. And last year, 2020, was the first time that the heat in our central heating system was produced emission-free. Of course, like I said, not any city is ready. The next step that we need to do is to make sure that our mobility is more sustainable, and we have implemented a sustainable mobility plan for 2030, and that is the next goal that we have to achieve as the biggest a next step for us. We have done the Green Capital Year with these 4 main themes, which is the carbon neutral life, citizen participation, circular economy, nature and water. It is very important, if you want to achieve something important, that you do it in collaboration with different kinds of stakeholders. This is one of the key elements of our implementation of this year. You can see some of the collaboration partners in this slide, and also on the left side of the slide you can see the previous European Green Capitals that have started the green work here in Europe. And also we are happy to say that Grenoble from France is going to take over next year, and in 2023 it is the Tallinn's turn to take over the initiative. And of course, the last point that I want to give you is that the next goal is that Lahti is going to be carbon neutral by 2025. Dear friends, that is almost tomorrow. This is a goal that we have set for ourselves, and we are on our way to get there. 5 years ahead of the goal set for Finland, and 25 years ahead of the goal set for Europe, which means that we need to especially focus on our mobility. And another thing is that we need to focus on our carbon neutral construction. And of course, getting there to be carbon neutral in 2025 means that we need to cut our CO2 emissions by 80% and compensate the rest 20%. With this initiative as the Green Capital of 2021, we want to create growth and build a legacy going forward. This is only a beginning, not the end. So 4 themes that we have chosen is the green electrification of mobility ecosystem, development center for carbon neutral construction industry, Nature Step to Health. We are starting a 10-year program where we're gonna study the health benefits of nature to fight illnesses and social issues in the area, and also how we create ways to enhance citizen participation, especially for youth. Of all our initiatives and all the projects that we're implementing this year, you can find from our website, and also my presentation is available for everybody after today. Thank you for your attention, and thanks for inviting me to share our work here in Lahti.
Thank you very much, Mila. And you can actually stay on now. You can keep your camera on. You can mute your microphone because we're coming to the very end. And indeed, can I ask all of our speakers, presenters today, please come all on to the virtual stage before I close the entire conference off. And Mila, I thought that's amazing that you want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2025. That would be just a spectacular achievement. So as our speakers from throughout today are going to join me, I'm going to just wrap up now. And just to give you a flavor of the amazing issues we covered over the last 2 days. Well, first of all, we visited 22 countries between Europe and Japan, from Kyoto to Lahti, from Kyoto in Japan, obviously, to Lahti in Finland. And just to recap, on day 1, we heard about local planning for decarbonization and energy transition. People talked about mobilization of local renewable energy, and we also heard about decarbonization of the agricultural and food sectors. And then on day 2, well, this morning we started off finding out about innovative ways to decarbonize transport, a hugely challenging but very necessary thing. Then we went on to hear about ways to make buildings more carbon neutral, and indeed how to transform tourism to become more environmentally friendly. So amazing initiatives from Japan and from Europe. And by the way, the video recording and presentation materials of the 2 days of the conference will be published on the events website, spipa-japan.net, by the end of the week, and all registrants will be informed by email when it is available. And of course, as you know, the conference was organized by the EU-Japan Centre for Industrial Cooperation with the financial support of the European Union as part of a 1-year cycle of events supporting EU-Japan cooperation for decarbonization. This was the final event in the series that started in October 2020. And the organizer wishes to thank all speakers and attendees for this conference, as well as for the previous events in the series. In total, the series gathered more than 4,000 registrants and 100 speakers. And also, of course, a big thanks to all those of you who put in questions and who engaged with the conference and the speakers as well. It's always lovely to hear what you have to say. And I'd like to extend a personal thanks to Stefan, Morgan, and all the team who worked so hard behind the scenes to coordinate this event, which I was involved in over the last 2 days. And of course, no doubt, all the hard work that went into the events over the last year. I know from moderating many conferences, more recently because of the pandemic online, and previously on stage in different parts of Europe, how much work goes into organizing these events to make sure they go off as seamlessly as they have done over the last 2 days. So Stefan and team, thank you very much for that. And again, a big warm thanks to those of you speaking this morning. I see your faces on screen. Great to have had your participation. So it's been my pleasure to moderate this very important 2-day event. I wish you all well in your endeavours to reduce carbon emissions, both in your localities and indeed across the globe, and especially as we come to the very important COP26 event. These issues are just so crucial now. I hope to see you all again in the future, and I will formally close off this event now and say goodbye to you. Thank you very much.